29th chapter of our exploration of Wuthering Heights, and we are getting ever closer to the end of Nellie's story here. So again, if you've missed any of the earlier episodes, they're all in the playlist, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe and all that normal stuff like the notification bell, etc, etc. So without further ado, let's go into chapter 29. So we know that Edgar Linton, he has shuffled off this mortal coil and he's no longer appearing in the story. He's gone. He's out of there. So we have the evening after the funeral. The evening after the funeral, my young lady and I were seated in the library, now musing mournfully. One of us despairing in our loss, now venturing conjectures as to the gloomy future. So a nice little antithetical expression of past and future, really. Sadness over the past, sadness over the future there. And you have Nellie speculating what might happen. That seemed rather too favourable an arrangement to be hoped for. That favourable arrangement is the idea that Linton Heathcliff and young Catherine, who is now married to Linton Heathcliff, could live at Thrushcross Grange because Heathcliff owns it all, and Nellie could be the servant there, and they could live a fairly happy life. But of course, because this is Wuthering Heights, that can't happen. And then also, it's no spoiler at all because we saw the domestic arrangement very similar to this, obviously with a missing character. We saw that at the start of the novel, so obviously Linton Heathcliff wasn't around at the start of the novel. So you can guess it's not going to go in the kind of happy path, as we're quite used really with the novel as well. So Heathcliff is now the owner of Thrushcross Grange. We have another devil reference, so we've had that as a very consistent motif throughout the whole novel as well. Should he fasten the door in his face? Yeah, not a great idea, servant. Not a great idea, random servant person. It would have, if we'd been mad enough to order that proceeding, we had not time. So yeah, luckily they don't get to enrage Heathcliff there. They wouldn't have done it anyway. He made no ceremony of knocking or announcing his name. He was master and availed himself of the master's privilege to walk straight in without saying a word. So that's good for the theme of power and property. And you've got Bronte establishing Heathcliff now owns Thrushcross Grange, so he can come and go as he pleases. It was the same room into which he'd been ushered as a guest 18 years before. The same moon shone through the window and the same autumn landscape lay outside. So that's a nice reference back to earlier on in the novel. It's technically an anaphoric reference, is it, going back to earlier on in the novel when Heathcliff had made his fortune and returned to the area, and he'd visited Thrushcross Grange, and it all kicked off with Catherine the First. It all kicked off then, didn't it? If you remember those. And Bronte expresses the idea of time kind of repeating itself, and she actually creates a sense of cohesion here, really here, because it connects back to that earlier sequence, but also in the same sense of how time passes, and it's the same moon shining through the window, the same autumn landscape laying outside. You know, let's all imagine a landscape for a second. No, let's not. Stop, he said, arresting her by the arm. No more runnings away. Well, that's Heathcliff, actually. I should have done the Tom Hardy type voice. Stop, he said, arresting her by the arm. No more runnings away. Where would you go? So, because we established, well, I didn't establish it, Bronte established it, but we discussed it, Heathcliff as the Gothic antagonist, he is, of course, the happiest scenario that Nellie imagined is definitely not going to happen. So, yeah, she's going to be going with him. He mentions everyone's favourite wonder wimp, Linton Heathcliff, who has redeemed himself a little bit, actually. So, and also you find some pathos for him here because he's been brutalised by Heathcliff for helping Catherine escape, which we heard about earlier chapters. He's such a cobweb, a pinch would annihilate him, but you'll see by his look that he has received his due. So he's been beating him. So he's your concern now. I yield all my interest in him to you. So that's, I think Linton Heathcliff has come out in the end. Yeah, definitely kind of redeemed as a character there. But he suffered for his helping. He suffered for his eventual compassion that he's had eventually for Catherine's situation. Nellie has an idea. As you hate them both, you'd not miss them. They can only be a daily plague to our natural heart. So the idea of them living at Thrush Grange. I'm seeking a tenant for the Grange, she answered. And I want my children about me, to be sure. And yeah, so actually, I highlighted that because Lockwood turns out to be that tenant. So as you can see, we're catching up to the present of the novel here. Linton is all I have to love in the world, and though you've done what you could to make him hateful to me and me to him, you cannot make us hate each other. So this is a good one for the theme of love. And then they've had a very weird romance, really, and relationship, and a very strange marriage, but through adversity, it's actually brought them closer. So again, I think there's ideas to be explored in terms of love in the face of adversity, and for all of Heathcliff's hostility and cruelty, he can't actually extinguish the good in people. It's something that, it's a theme of the novel, isn't it, about shaping people and bringing them up, but you can have a kind of innate goodness and love as well. I think you could explore those as ideas there. And just to really reinforce that, I know he has a bad nature, said Catherine, he's your son, so bad nature. We've said before that Linton Heathcliff, he's got some of the worst qualities of his parents, hasn't he? He's got the fragility of the Linton side, and he's also got the cruelty of Heathcliff as well, and he combines that. But I'm glad I've it better to forgive it, and I know he loves me, and for that reason I love him. Mr. Heathcliff, you have nobody to love you. So Catherine, again, she shows really her positive qualities, and again, she's a combination of, she's got the good qualities of Catherine and she's got the good qualities of Edgar Linton as well, but she hasn't inherited the weakness. And again, another thing we've discussed is that these Linton Heathcliff was kind of a child of hate, really, where you could say that Catherine the younger was the second Catherine rather, was a product of love, you could say that, and her parents were more actually, I'm not going to say too much more, but you get the idea. Yes, I'm going to leave that. Anyway, right, you can fill in. You can join all the dots on that bit. Lonely like the devil and envious like him. Nobody loves you. Nobody will cry for you when you die. I wouldn't be you. So that's Catherine standing up to Heathcliff there. Begone, witch, and get your things. Remember earlier on in the novel, there was some interesting moments where Catherine was drawing on ideas about witchcraft. Obviously, Bronte's doing it as well. So you mentioned Bronte's doing this, but there has been several references to witchcraft, and again, that links to the theme of the supernatural as well, and it also links to femininity and female power as well. And maybe there's a sense of, as awful and as powerful and as abusive as Heathcliff is, maybe there is an innate fear of female power maybe as well. That's again something that could be looked at in more detail, and maybe that's a sign of it. So, having studied Mrs. Linton's, he said, I should have that at home, not because I need... Look at Mrs. Linton, sorry. He's thinking of the portrait of Catherine there. He had to take that and keep it from Thrush Grange because he owns everything now. And if you think taking that I say photo, it wouldn't be a photo, taking that portrait is creepy, it gets even more creepy because this is the infamous grave tampering that Heathcliff has done, and we hear of two instances actually of it. And any interfering with the dead in any way is taboo. And again, in the novel, we've seen how a lot of the situations in the novel, a lot of the things particular characters say, like Catherine and Heathcliff, the original Catherine, it goes against the grain of established Christian beliefs of the country as well. And interfering with the dead, like not respecting the dead, it's a taboo. And it's still a taboo, obviously, to this day. It's a taboo, universally. And it also helps to establish Heathcliff's villainous credentials. But the sexton is the grave digger. So I got the sexton who was digging Linton's grave to remove the earth of her coffin lid, and I opened it. So yeah, this is all really taboo. It's very powerful imagery. It's very ghoulish actually as well. For Heathcliff, it makes total sense because it's all out of love. But this is such a twisted love. It's meaning he's actually interfering with the grave. So he wants to see her face. He also arranges so that her coffin, the side of her coffin, is going to be exposed and not the side facing Linton. He said, I wish it had been soldered in lead. And I bribed the sexton to put it away when I am laid there and slide mine out too. So he's going to get Linton's out of the way, put his coffin, he's going to get himself buried there as well, get the side of the coffin taken out so he can be with her in death. So yes, he's obsessed is the word. So if you're doing the theme of obsession as well, this is a great chapter for this one as well. I disturbed nobody, Nelly, he replied, and I gave some ease to myself. I shall be a great deal more comfortable now. But I should have said about that bit, you're not ashamed to disturb the dead. So that's what I mean, like the taboo of what he's doing. It goes against everything polite, civilised society stands for, doesn't it? It's grotesque. And if she'd been dissolved into earth or worse, what do you have dreamt of then? Of dissolving with her and being more happy still. Yes. That's, again, that primal love they have, the idea of being together, going into the earth. That image is very powerful. Again, they're united in their connection to nature. And more for the theme of supernatural here, I have a strong faith in ghosts, as I have a conviction that they can and do exist among us. The day she was buried, there came a fall of snow. So a bit of pathetic fallacy there as well. But the supernatural, the idea of the ghost, there's almost like a kind of ritualistic idea of what he's doing with the grave, and he wants to be with her in the afterlife, and it's not like a Christian afterlife. He wants to be a ghost with Catherine, really. This is his ambition, is to be with her, and it's not the conventional sense of the afterlife according to established English Church of England, Anglican Christianity of the time and of now. It's not. It just doesn't fit. So when she died originally, he also reveals here that he dug up the grave. I should have said he actually uses his hands, doesn't he? First of all, there trying to get to Catherine to see her one more time, and even to make him I got a spade from the tool actually before. To be fair, he does go and get a spade from the tool house. I fell to work with my hands. Yeah, there it is. I was looking for it. I thought it was in the other page, but it was round this way. So he digs, and then he's like an animal scraping through the ground. The wood commenced cracking about the screws. I was on the point of turning my object when it seemed I heard a sigh from one above. So he thinks he actually hears the ghost of Catherine as he's trying to get into her grave. This is after she died, going back in time here. This is a little earlier sequence we weren't privy to that he's telling Nelly about now. I knew no living thing in flesh and blood was by, but as certainly as you perceive the approach to some substantial body in the dark, though it cannot be discerned, so I felt that Cathy was there, not under me, but on the earth. Her presence was with me. It remained while I refilled the grave and led me home. You may laugh if you will, but I was sure I should see her there. So he's convinced that Catherine's spirit was with him, and he felt that spirit. And there's loads of this chapter here. I felt her by me. I could almost see her, yet I could not. She showed herself, as she often was in life, a devil to me. Because there is actually here, though, I think there's some pathos for Heathcliff, because you can see, like, his overwhelming love for Catherine and his grief for her excuse me, has twisted him in this most perverse way to do things that go against common decency and standards. But he can't see that there's anything wrong. He's obviously completely obsessed. When I sat in the house with Hareton, it seemed that on going out I should meet her. When I walked to the moors, I should meet her coming in. When I went from home, I hastened to return. She must be somewhere at the Heights, I was certain. And when I slept in her chamber, I was beaten out of that. I couldn't lie there. For the moment I closed my eyes, she was either outside the window, or sliding back the panels, or entering the room, or resting her darling head on the same pillow as she did when a child. So he can't sleep at night. He's been tortured this idea of thinking he's going to see her. He's been looking out for her all this time. And because he's seen the body now, because he had the grave digger up for him, now since I've seen her, I'm pacified a little. So he's seen that has helped him a bit. So there is some, as distorted and as weird as all of this is, it doesn't excuse the terrible things that he's done. But I think Bronte has established there is pathos for him. He clearly had this immense love for Catherine, and he has not obviously been able to cope with the grief of losing her. And I think Bronte's making that very clear. But it's manifested itself in such a appalling way as well. And this is... It explains why he is. It doesn't necessarily excuse the way that Heathcliff is. And even this appearance here, diminishing the grim aspect of his countenance. So this is Nellie's description of him here, but imparting a peculiar look of trouble and a painful appearance of mental tension towards one absorbing subject. So he doesn't even look as scary as he does normally. As he's thinking about all this, he's actually looking troubled. Goodbye, Ellen. Oh, that's the wrong voice. I was carried away. It's Catherine. I'm going to go, goodbye, Ellen. I shouldn't do that. Whispered my dear little mistress as she kissed me. Her lips fell like ice. Come and see me, Ellen. Don't forget. Take care you do no such thing, Mrs. Dean, said her new father. When I wish to speak to you, I'll come here. I want none of your prying at my house. So we end the chapter with young Catherine doomed to this life of misery at Wuthering Heights. She's going to be there with her husband. At least she does now love Linton Heathcliff, and he's improved as a person himself, but she's trapped with this awful father-in-law, Heathcliff. Heathcliff fixed Catherine's arm under his, though she disputed the act at first evidently. With rapid strides he hurried her into the alley whose trees concealed them. So off he disappears into the world of nature. It's taken her back up to Wuthering Heights. So anyway, that was a big chapter there, an important chapter, lots of important things. It wasn't actually a long chapter, but there's lots of important things in there. So I hope you found that useful. As I say, don't forget there's the other videos. Have a look at those. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell. I hope you found that useful. Have a good day or night, whatever you're doing, and I will see you on the next one. We'll be on chapter 30. We're really getting close to the end, so don't miss it. Bye.